Welcome to the Prospecting Today podcast. And today we are honored with our guest, Shelley Zavitz, who has written a book about the mistakes she made in her first year as a real estate agent and what she would do differently. So I invited her on this podcast because I think she has a lot of good information to share with everyone. And so we're just going to jump right into it, Shelley, and tell me, why did you feel the need to write a book? Were there that many mistakes that were made?
Firstly, thanks for having me.
Of course.
And yes, I would say that I absolutely had about a million missteps. And anytime you try to do something new, the likelihood of failure is high. So the reason that I wrote the book is I kind of got out of my rookie years and I was in the shower, my best thinking time. And I was
Yeah, of
like,
course.
I wish that someone had told me blah, you know? And I was like, I got out of the shower and I wrote down the title, Your First 365 Days in Real Estate. And I was like, man, like somebody should have written this book, because there's lots of books out there about how to build a team, how to be a millionaire agent, how to be the best ever, but nobody tells you how to get through the first 6 months when you don't have a paycheck. How do you build systems? What's a database and how do you work it? And how do you market to your sphere when you don't have a budget? So I had some skills when I was working in broadcasting on how to work on a startup, like the basics. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna write a back to basics book. And I'm going to be specific about real estate because I know a lot about that right now, and I'm still having all the feels of the rejection that I went through, and everything was very vivid still. So the book is it's in between story time and actual, you know, things that you can implement today to try, and because everything works in 90 days, right? So what you do today is going to show up in 90 days. So it's just things like that. Like how do you consistently do these things that will show results in the future? And I would say that, I did well based on what I started with. So that's a very long
That,
answer.
no, that's great. So let's kind of dive into, you wrote this book about it. What do you think is the biggest mistake that you made and that most new agents are making?
The biggest mistake that I made was thinking that I would just like walk in and sell a house, and that I could just, convince somebody that, you should trust me with no experience to help you through the biggest purchase of your life. I didn't have the mindset. I didn't understand the amount of trust that that takes for
Yeah.
someone to say, okay, yes, please guide me through this huge transaction. And it took a while for me to understand that my own sphere, the closest people to me, which wasn't very big. I actually just moved to the United States, and I knew 4 people in Portland, and I was like, "Ooh, how am I going to build a referral business with only four
Right.
people in my sphere?" So, and then as that continued and I met more people, I realized that I was going to have to work harder than anyone else, because I not only have to help them through their transaction, but I also have to build trust, and I need to do it quickly. So, and then I've really worked on that and honed those skills into staying in flow with the people that I work with, so that that trust is already there. Like I'm trying to build a 100% referral business now, because I sincerely feel that that trust element is the most important thing in business. Why would anyone want to do business with you unless they trust you, you know? So.
Absolutely. So I think a lot of agents struggle with that in terms of building something that feels authentic to them with an individual so that they can then later get referrals. So do you have any great tips on how to do that?
I would strongly suggest that you look inward before outward.
Mhm.
What I did was I did the remarkability test, and I'd have to look up the book. She kind of takes you through it, and you kind of go through this exercise of realizing what you're naturally good at, what's authentically your gift. And then once you know what it is, when you're in open houses, when you're with people that are strangers, you can connect with people because that's already you, and when I was in Vancouver, BC, I was remodeling condos. I know a lot about, what it takes to cosmetically fix something up. So when I met people that were of that same mindset, it was very easy to connect. It was very easy to get trust right away with strangers because I already had those skills in place, and everybody has a version of that. But I would suggest if you are at the beginning of something like this, go inward first. Find out what your gift is. Everybody has one, and then work your business based on that and build it from that spot.
Yeah, absolutely. So you wrote a whole book. So let's talk about throw out a couple more things you touched on in the book that agents in their first year should be doing differently, should be aware of so that they can do it differently.
Um, Well, I learned that the word pipeline for the first time, and realized that I kept having this situation where I would get somebody into transaction, and then I would be working inside of the transaction. I would forget to prospect. And I think that it's really important that, and now that I know this, that you do have to work within the deal, but don't forget that you still need business 90 days from now. So you still need to be making your calls. It's an exhausting experience. You are going to work very hard in your first and second year, but don't forget that it's really important that you keep doing things consistently. So I
Yeah.
would say the pipeline and the database thing and actually having a system for your database, that's really important. I touch on marketing. Go through the basics because marketing is my background. What is a brand? How do people absorb information? What do they need to hear from you to act? Things like that. I talk about safety. I talk about this one time in an open house where I was incredibly not safe, and I didn't put in any sort of systems that if I am ever in an open house alone with someone, what do I do? Who's
Yeah.
around? Who do I call? So I touch on that. Uh, and then the other thing with the book is that like I had moved to a new city, new country. I knew four people, and I wanted to be Rookie of the Year in my company. So that the book kind of follows my journey of like what it's going to take for me to be able to generate that kind of business, not really knowing anyone.
Oh, that's
So
great.
yeah, it's supposed to make you laugh and
Yeah.
cry a little maybe for me.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I really try and get across to people is you got to give before you get. And even now, I give all of myself to my clients, to my friends, in a way that's me. And I want to share it with them because I know that if they care for me, they'll help me with my small business too. They just want to because we care for each other. And if you are a very transactional agent in this moment in time with the way that the digital world is coming into our business, I really caution you that relationships are the way that are going to sustain your business, not just being one-off transactional. Where's my check? That I
Yeah.
think that mindset really needs to change in our industry and very quickly.
So you say, what did it take for you to kind of become this rock star producer in that first year? What was the main thing it took for you to do that? When you say you take us through your journey of becoming that like top producer, what was that thing you had to figure out to be able to do that?
So the systems, the database, I surrounded myself with four key people, and I talk about them. They're the mentor, the visionary, the accountability partner, and the coach. And I just hired in these roles. I didn't pay them, but I hired them in because who you surround yourself with in business is so important. So I
Mhm.
started with that. I had a really good core nucleus of people that were going to help me. Then it was a no quit attitude. I worked until I couldn't. That's the truth.
Yeah.
And and I always showed up with a thank you for this opportunity when other agents gave me leads, anything. I was like, thank you, because I don't have to do that. And when
Mhm.
you give out gratitude, you get it back. You get so many gifts back. So That's kind of like the spiritual part of it. And then inside, it's database, it's systems, it's consistency, it's doing it until it starts to show up and not really giving up. Because a lot of agents are, okay, I'll try phone calls for a month. Oh, I hate it. I'm not going to do it. You have to. You have to
Yeah.
connect with your people. So,
So when you say the process is in place, what are the best processes that you found that you would put in place?
um,
Because you say
just
a process
consist.
for your pipeline.
Right. So, I make 12 to 15 calls a day to people in my sphere. And there's different ways that I do that. And I did that originally as well. And I really had to get over myself in the phone call arena because, you know, calling up somebody out of the blue, it feels like. And I had to change the way I felt about that. And I'm just calling people who already care about me to make sure that they don't need anything. Or and if they do need something, maybe I could help them.
Hmm.
So it was phone calls. I wrote letters consistently to people, market updates. I tried to show value, consistently showing value and touches. So I don't know who said it, but someone said you can't be someone's realtor for life if you're not in their life.
Hmm.
So I set out a process of every day I'm going to write 2 letters, I'm going to make 12 to 15 phone calls, I'm going to meet certain amount of people in the week, I'm going to break bread with a certain amount of people in the week so that people know who I am. They get to know you. If you
Right.
just, send them out a market report, well, what makes you different than anybody else, right?
Right. So then you talked about marketing. And when it comes to marketing, what do you think is the one thing an agent can start doing today that's a little different that will help them stand out a little bit more with marketing?
I think that you need to have a 12-month plan. And you need to, if you don't have the budget to do it, figure out a way to still make touches. So the first year I took out a sheet of paper, I put 12 boxes in it, and I said, okay, every month I'm going to do X amount of email blasts. I'm going to do X amount of pop buys. I'm going to do one event. I don't have any money. How can I do that? And I started to brainstorm ways that I could do it because if you don't have a plan and you just randomly, it's March, you're like, okay, I need to touch my people. What am I going to do?
Hmm.
That's not a solid way to run a business, right?
Yeah.
So I would say planning with your marketing is really important. And then going back to that remarkability test, this is the essence of me. Who should I be touching? Because target market's important. Who should I be touching that is the essence of me that we are going to easily relate to each other? Is my biggest thing when in your first year. Don't trying to reach everyone is a mistake. Try to find the nucleus of people like a niche that are naturally should be your people. They're already in flow with you so easily, and then bring them together and touch on them together and call them consistently.
Give me a really good example of a way you were able to do these touches on zero budget and how you personalize them.
How I personalize them. So I realized that my natural uh, group of people were medical professionals. So what I started to do was write them letters about specifically the certain types of loans that they could get based on. So I knew a lot of dentists, I knew a lot of doctors. There's a lot of loans that are specific to them. So
Hmm.
I started to write, and they're just stamps. And my company provided cards. I wrote until I couldn't. And then the other thing that I did was I chose a specific part of a neighborhood that I lived in, and I wrote consistently. I wrote, this is what the market's doing. This is the time to do invest. This is the time to sell. This is the time to buy. And here's why. And it's just value. And then I started to get information back of, oh, thank you for telling me that. I'm not looking to buy, but my daughter wants to move into town. Can you help her? And that's all it
Gotcha.
is. You need to be top of mind, and giving the doctors, especially, giving them information they didn't know. They didn't know these loans were available to them. It took me a long time. I called a lot of lenders to
Mhm.
find out what I could provide them. I had to learn myself before I could give it to them. But it didn't
Right,
cost me any money. It was phone calls and time, right? You have to have
right.
the will to want to do that, though.
And then you talked about surrounding yourself with some hand-picked mentors. What went into your thought process of who would be a good mentor to reach out to and surround you with, like the team of mentors? How did you go about selecting those?
So the mentor itself position is the person that is running the business that you want to run. They have the same view of the world. They have the same, outlook, value system that you have. It's basically you in the future. The visionary is the person that is kind of like pushing the industry up, and they're thinking bigger, and you're watching that person because you eventually are going to be a leader in this industry. You should be. That should be the goal. So what are they doing? How are they thinking? Who are they surrounding themselves with? And just pay attention. The accountability partner was somebody that was in the trenches with me. We were going through the same problems. I would face rejection, I would face failure, and then I would talk to that person. They'd be like, "Oh, me too, but I don't think it's going to be like this forever." And then you teach each other to like get over the wall. And the coach I chose, she became one of the most important people in the story, and the reason is because the coach is just celebrates with you or picks you up when you've fallen, and they're kind of dusting you off, and they throw you back out for the second quarter. And the coach is kind of like the rah, you can do it. And
Mhm.
it's not that I talk to these people consistently. Actually, I probably only talked to the visionary 4 times that year, but I paid attention to every single thing they did. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
um, and and it can't be one person that does everything, because then you're just taxing someone's time. So
Yeah.
I
So,
broke it into 4.
yeah, of course. So, Shelley, just in wrapping up, if there was one thing you could tell agents to start doing today that would make a difference in their business, what would that one thing be?
Be a business. Change your mindset from, I just want to help people get into homes, to I am a business. I'm going to operate like a business. I am helping somebody through the biggest decision of their life. Treat it that way. It matters what you're doing, and show up with as much passion for the person. Give it away, and they'll give it back to you.
Oh, I love it. So, if people want to read your book or learn more about you, where can they go, Shelley?
The book is on Amazon. It's called Your First 365 Days in Real Estate. And then there's a website called newrealtor365.com. And I'm blogging every Monday on that. So it's just exercises and tips you can do that week. Try
Okay,
and stay
great.
focused. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time.
I'm grateful to be here. Thank you very much.